Hello, as Jim said, I'm Cassidy and I'm the marketing manager at Nickel Brothers. We are building recyclers and we've been family run since 1956. It's really our goal to eliminate demolition waste. I'm going to take some time today to kind of go through the who, what, when, where, and how of what we do and how we can best collaborate with you to create sustainable solutions for your projects. But first, I just wanted to touch on something. Last week, I was at a government conference that was talking about recycling and waste management. And it really struck me being there how many people were there to talk about change and things that needed to happen. But really, they weren't the people that had the power to implement those changes, right? Due to bureaucracy or not actually being in the industries that they were advocating for. And looking in this room, everyone here builds communities. Regardless of whether it's mandated, we all have the ability to make choices regarding waste management that promote affordable, achievable, and sustainable communities. And I really think that we have a responsibility to each other and to our families and to the places that we live to make those choices rather than just doing, the minimum of what's mandated by our municipalities. I just wanted to hope that resonates with you throughout the presentation. So the main reason that we're talking about home recycling today is that ultimately we don't have 7 planets. We are rapidly running out of room for landfills and just for all of the things that we discard on a daily basis. At Nickel Bros, we really encourage an over and up first and recycle last approach, which basically means that if you can repurpose the building on the site that it's already at, do that. If you need more room, you can raise it and create another floor. If you have a 600 square foot older home and it's not suitable for the family that's living there now, you can move it to the back and use it as a second dwelling in an income property. There are so many options depending on your lot size of what you can do with that building in place. And if those aren't options for that family, then you can pick it up, you can move it to another place, and you can create an affordable housing alternative for another family while saving all of that material in that house because it's still intact. Currently, the average house weighs about 40 to 80 tons, and about 40% of that weight is wood products. So I just want to touch on what the City of Vancouver was saying. The mandated amount to save currently is 3 tons. That's less than 10% of the total wood weight in a house. For home recycling options, you have the raising, you have on-site relocation, and you have home removal. So depending on your project, there are lots of different things that we can kind of figure out to help you reuse that home. For raising and relocation, of course, we actually are working with a client right now, and she has a very large property, and she just purchased the acreage next to her as well, and she wanted to subdivide it and sell it. But she's lived in the home on that property for 40 years, and she didn't want it demolished. And the contractor she was working with was basically like, you have to, because it's not suitable to sell to someone else. Just because it was small and it's older and it wouldn't fit in with kind of the aesthetic of that subdivision in his mind. And it actually got to a point where she delayed the project because she was so heartbroken over having to demolish this home that she'd raised her family in. So as an alternative, we're now moving that home to the back of one of the lots as a coach house. And their project has been able to move forward while still giving her peace of mind and feeling like her needs are being taken care of. We also have a home in Vancouver right now that we're raising. And the reason is, again, the family's in love with the home, but they have a disabled family member and an elderly parent that are moving in with them. So they were going to have 4 generations of family living on one floor. So we've raised that now. They've created a full suite with an elevator. And it's still a beautiful, perfect home for their family to live in. And when they go to sell it, the property value's gone up because they have an income property now. They have a suite that students can live in. It's a university area, so that's a really great option for them. And then for home recycling, there's a few options to home removal and reselling depending on how you want to look at it. One is that it's much lower in cost to the builder and to the client. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but it's a hugely lower cost, especially depending on where you are. It's environmentally friendly, of course. You also have less abatement. So home removal doesn't disturb materials to the same extent that deconstruction and demolition does. So your abatement costs go down, and your need to dispose of those hazardous materials also goes down, which is a really big draw for people because it saves costs and it saves the time. There's also just the quality of the buildings. We don't have the same materials that they had in 1940 or 1910 to build with anymore. The homes that were built back then they're just better. No offense to anyone, but they are just so solid and structurally sound and beautiful. It's also something to keep in mind, like a traditional building from the 1930s has a burn rate of 15 to 17 minutes. So it takes almost 20 minutes for a home back then to catch fire to an extent that you would not be able to put that fire out. Whereas a home now, a modern built home, the burn rate is 5 to 7 minutes, which gives you a lot less time to get your family out if it comes to that. We get a lot of older homes with dental moldings, leaded glass windows, solid fir floors and finishing. But a lot of people don't realize that we also get a lot of new homes. So for instance, Quinn was built in 2012, only a few years old, and she is at risk of being demolished because she's on a big lot. You can see the large driveway there, and people want to be able to have more buildings on that lot than is currently there. It's kind of a huge waste of resources, and it's awesome that the owners have offered the home to us to market for them. We also get a lot of smaller homes, which are perfect as second dwellings. Piper, who is actually in Seattle, she is actually being marketed as an office building because she is landlocked, which means she can't move out of a certain neighborhood. And there's an awesome kind of commercial area there that's all really funky with all of its character homes. So she is being kind of remodeled on the inside to make offices rather than bedrooms. And there's also a misconception that we only take nice homes, which isn't true. If it's structurally sound and can be, turned into something livable for someone, we will take it. Everything can be renovated. It's okay. Please do not hesitate to call us, even if it, in your opinion, is a rundown kind of building. There's also another misconception that we can't take really large buildings. This was an 8,000 square foot mansion that we moved completely intact out of Gig Harbor, again in Seattle. We've also moved, 10,000 square foot brick mansions. We've moved glass buildings. Really anything can be suitable for removal. I'm going to go into some of the benefits now. So again, I talked about how the cost of removal versus demolition is a lot lower. As Metro Vancouver and the City of Vancouver touched on, there's currently an almost $15,000 deposit for demolition with those recycling rates. Again, even those recycling rates don't totally touch on the actual amount of material in a home that is available to be recycled. There's still a huge amount of materials from those homes that is going to the landfill, even though it still has 50 years of life left in it. It's just something to keep in mind. But for removal, the cost of your removal is subsidized by the buyer of the home. So the average cost to the builder or the client is only about $5,000. And you can kind of count on getting that deposit back because you're saving the entire building, which, from a cost standpoint is just kind of a win-win for everyone. Again, you have less abatement, less hazardous material disposal required, so that's also cutting down your costs, cutting down your time. It's also making it a little bit of a safer workplace. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff ending up in the air for the neighbors or for the homeowner or for your workers. So from a WCB standpoint, you've got a little bit more safety there if you're removing the home. We also do have some municipalities right now that are working on a tax rebate, kind of like you get when you deconstruct a home. So that would bring that cost down even lower. I think Richmond is one of the ones working on that because they are almost out of landfill space. So a lot of people actually think that we won't take homes with hazmat. Usually when I talk about how the abatement costs go down, they kind of go, well, yeah, because you're not going to take it anyway. But 50% of the homes we deal with have hazardous materials. It's really not a huge drawback for us. We have engineers on staff that custom set all of our equipment, and we have a big safety department that trains all of our staff. Everyone is very able to do our moves without disturbing those materials. Everything is designed to minimize the disruption of those materials. So it's really like we will take it regardless of what's inside it. We do require a hazmat report just so that the new owner of the home is aware of everything. And going into new owners of homes, housing affordability. I think a lot of people don't realize how much their waste can impact lower income families. This is a subdivision that we partnered with the San Juan Housing Trust to create. So we moved 12 homes into the San Juan Islands because they didn't have a lot of rental housing. And that's 12 families that have housing now. And it didn't cost the nonprofit as much as it would have to build. So to build on the San Juan Islands can be up to $500 a square foot. To move a home in is anywhere from $60 a square foot to $120 a square foot. It's a huge savings for those nonprofits that don't have the funding that an individual or privatized person would. This is another building. It's actually an apartment building that we moved into Port Townsend, again, because they didn't have any rental housing. This was a building slated for demolition, and now it is low-income rental apartments for a community that really, really needed that. It's just kind of awesome. So if we were to work with one of you, you want to keep in mind just time frame. So to move the home, because of the way the permitting is set up with the build and demo permit being tied, we generally want at least 3 months notice that there is a house that could be removed to give us time to market that home, to do the root surveys, to make sure that it's actually structurally sound and feasible to move it out. And then, you have your hazmat report. We have people on our staff that will inspect the home to make sure that it will stand up to the move. A lot of people think that when you move a home, you get lots of cracks and settling, which isn't actually the case. As long as the home is built well, you generally won't even really get any cracks in the plaster. It's a very smooth, well-balanced process. And then other than that, you just kind of have to deal with cutting off the power and, getting rid of the foundation, which, can be chipped up for fill. And other than that, we take care of pretty much everything. We do the move, we take care of all of the utilities moving the home out, we find the buyer. So it's a pretty streamlined process for contractors. We try to make it pretty easy, and we have very experienced people on our team that are familiar with your landscape and with ours, so they're very good at just kind of alleviating any concerns that you or your clients may have about the process. And that's it.